Commission meeting. Good evening and welcome to everyone. We'll start with our roll call.
Commissioner Hussein,
Aye.
Commissioner Pika,
Here.
Commissioner Robbins,
Here.
Commissioner Huber,
Here.
Commissioner Von Hoff,
Here.
Commissioner Henches,
Here.
Commissioner Watson.
Here.
Thank you very much. Also with us this evening at the end of the podium is our planning manager, Brad Davis. Next to him is Rachel Nospish, our deputy clerk to the board. In the audience, I see two of our staff members, at least Marty Schmitz, our zoning administrator, Greg Wagner, our principal planner, and I believe Nathan Hall is probably here as well. He's not here this evening. I'm getting a shaking head. I think that's about it.
Mr. Chair,
It's
yeah, I want to welcome to the Planning Commission our newest Planning Commissioner, Amar Hussein. Welcome. Amar was appointed by District 4 Commissioner Dave Beer, a resident of Shakopee. Amar works for the state of Minnesota. He served on the City of Rosemont Planning Commission for several years and even had a short stint as the chair of that City Planning Commission. So Amar is familiar with what we do here and will bring his experience to the board. So I want to welcome Amar.
welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome.
So, I don't have much to say, except that, well, I have lived in Shakopee for the past 8 years, and I have worked in the Min-IT for the past 22 years. Minnesota IT department, state of Minnesota. I have a family that is, but my children are out. We are only two of us live. My wife also lives with me, and she works at a elder care facility. That's all.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Welcome. We're glad to have you on the commission with us. Also, I already made my first mistake of the year. I see Commissioner Tom Wolf is in the audience as well here. Sorry to miss you, Commissioner. We have no items on the consent agenda, but we do have the approval of our December 12th, 2022 Planning Advisory Commission meeting minutes. All the commissioners have seen the minutes. Are there any corrections, additions, or deletions to the minutes as printed? Hearing none, I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
Motion by Commissioner Robbins,
I'll second it.
second by Commissioner Huber. All in favor, vote aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The minutes are approved. As I was saying, there is no items on our consent agenda this evening. So our first public hearing will be number 2022-2022-083, request to approve an interim use permit to operate a sand and gravel mine, Tiller Corporation applicant and Malcolm Sales Incorporated property owner in section 16 of Louisville Township. And Mr. Wagner will be making the staff report. Good evening, Mr. Wagner.
Good evening, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. On the screen is the site location map of the subject 19-acre parcel in section 16 of Louisville Township. The property is located, as you can see, this would be to the to the west of US Highway 169 and to the south of State Highway 41. And then Union Pacific Railroad is the line that you see running on the west side of the property. Just for kind of clarification, as you said, Mr. Chair, the property is owned by Melkerson Sales, and then you'll hear, you mentioned Tiller Corporation, the applicant. Tiller Corporation is owned by a larger company, Martin Marietta. So you'll generally hear me say Martin Marietta during the presentation, but they're the same company operating this facility, and they operate a facility just to the north here as well. So here's an aerial photo of the property, again, along Trunk Highway 41. So the site is accessed off of Demcon Drive, which is shown here to the east of the property and goes down towards the Demcon landfill and Demcon companies. The site just to the south of the subject property is the regional MnDOT trucking facility. So this larger piece here is a MnDOT facility, and you can see the driveway that comes off of Demcon Drive and goes kind of through the MnDOT property and further south down towards the Demcon landfill, which is just to the south here. That's the access that we'll be talking about and that you probably saw on the maps that were included in the packet. So when we talk about site access, that's the main access, through the property, and we'll be talking about the haul roads. Martin Marietta, as you indicated, is requesting the interim use permit to operate a sand and gravel mine on the 19-acre site. The property is zoned I-2 heavy industrial, which allows the mining operations. This is just kind of a figure that was included in the packet, which shows some additional labeling on what's around here. So to the south is the Demcon landfill, which historically was previously mined out by Tiller. The MnDOT site to the south, which also was previously mined, that mining took place in the mid-2000s as part of the 212 project and some other state projects. So that's largely when that mine was dug out. To the north is property owned by the SMSC. And then across Highway 41 is a industrial blacktopping business, and then a quarry operated here on the Weckman property. But further to the north is a plant or mining operation and an asphalt plant owned by Martin Marietta. So that's kind of what I referenced before, that they have a presence in this area. This company has been operating mines in this area for many, many years. To the west of the property and to the west of the MnDOT facility is Jackson Heights Mobile Home Park. So that's really the only residential use in this area. This is just a general drainage plan. The site is higher in elevation on the eastern side. Typically the contours were at like 800, and then slopes down towards the railroad tracks where you hit like 750 elevation. So there's quite an elevation change. And then you can see the topography on the MnDOT pit that was dug out. So you can see how that pit was excavated about 15 years ago. This is a final drainage plan, and I'll reference back to that a little bit later. But this is the overall site map. So the proposed use on the site is to mine material, sand and gravel material, out of this site. The applicants in their narrative indicated approximately 150,000 to 300,000 tons of sand and gravel annually. And it's anticipated that this mine would have a lifespan of between 5 to 10 years. So relatively quick turnaround for excavating the materials out of here. This is the proposed mining operations plan. What would occur on the site would essentially just be extraction, crushing, screening, washing, and stockpiling of the resources. So there'd be no blasting or any other activity like that, just equipment excavation. Mining would take place starting in the narrow portion on the south, as you can see, and then occur following the arrows designated here on the plan. The first phase is 10-acre excavation area, so that would be mainly the area along the railroad. And then phase 2 would excavate more into the slope, and then that phase would be about 6 acres in size. Just to go back to this aerial, just since I mentioned the adjacent uses, well, actually, what I'll do, I'll just switch over to here. There we go. So the trailer park is right here, and then you have the MnDOT site, but you can see the eastern extent of the property is fairly heavily wooded. So the applicant and their engineer in their narrative, we talk about screening and berming and everything. So that's the highest point of the site, and the mining activity will take place in the lower area. So a lot of the activity that's going to happen in this mine is going to be screened by the existing vegetation and screened along the roadway or from Trunk Highway 41 as well. So phase 2 would be that last 6-acre piece. And then you can see here the engineer has indicated the required setbacks from the Trunk Highway right-of-way. The only other thing that will kind of be unique here is this upper area where those 4 squares are shown in the purple. The end land use plan, which I'll flip to here in a second, the long-term end land use here is that some of the site would be preserved for future industrial development. And so right now, since it's in Louisville Township, all development needs to occur on well and septic. So they are preserving those 4 areas, those 4 septic areas for that future potential development. The end land use, they're anticipating potentially creating a couple lots, industrial lots out of this. So probably 2 lots. So each of those proposed lots would require 2 septic sites. So that's what they're preserving. The only other unknown here is that across the road is Jackson Township. And so Shakopee and Jackson Township have an annexation agreement to bring municipal services out to Jackson Township and annex those areas. So it is possible when this mine is complete that in the future those services could be available. So there's area being preserved, and we will have septic area if sewer is never extended across the road, but that's being preserved up there. The other thing that was kind of referenced in the packet, and there was a memo from MnDOT, as I mentioned, the MnDOT site was previously excavated or previously mined for some road projects. And you can see the topography that what MnDOT left was kind of a high ridge on the, I guess it would be the east and west line where the 2 sites meet. So the applicants have discussed with MnDOT in some extensive discussions about what they would like to do is grade that common line out and not have to leave a 30-foot setback with a huge wall of material. So they would like to grade into that common property line area and kind of finish out, what was mined in between the 2 properties. So this is now the kind of the end land use plan or the reclamation plan. So the upper area to the east is where the site would be reclaimed for future potential industrial development. And then the lower area where they're mining down near the water table, that will be established for future infiltration for stormwater management. So future development would really only potentially occur on this upper portion here, and then this will, the bottom part will be stormwater along the railway. The site was included in environmental impact statement review done for the Miriam Junction Sands project. That is a larger project in this area. And that EIS was completed and went before the Scott County Board of Commissioners back in July of 2020. So there's no environmental review that would need to be done specifically to this site as it was included in that environmental review. The applicants included some cross sections here and then a site survey. The applicants met with the Louisville Town Board back on January 5th, and the township, who is here tonight, did recommend approval of the proposed mining operation, subject to conditions that were in their consultant planner's review memorandum. A copy of this was included in your packet. And so this is the review memorandum from the township planner. And essentially, Cindy Nash, the town planner, she recommended that we included some conditions pertaining to the termination or expiration of the permit. And I'll show you those in a minute. So we do have some amended conditions that were in your packet tonight that were sent to the applicant earlier today. But essentially, she's looking for a number of things that would terminate this permit should the mining either cease or continue on into the future. So the first one is just the IUP shall expire 1 year from date of issuance. That is a standard that we put on all of our permits, so that is already on the first page of any recorded document. The IUP shall expire upon termination of mining operations and reclamation. So we have that, and I'll show you what we propose for a condition here. The IUP shall expire if the IUP is revoked by the county for violations of the IUP terms and conditions. The IUP shall expire at conclusion or interruption of mining operations for more than 1 year, and the IUP shall expire 20 years from date of issuance. So those are what they're recommending. So if I flip to, we have in your packet recommended amended conditions of approval. And I've underlined language that we're proposing to add, and then I have strike through in here, and I'll just zoom in a little bit. Actually, I'll flip to the, so condition number 14, which would be on page 2 of those, we took the township's recommended termination and we added to what we already had. So we have now IUP shall terminate upon cessation of mining activities estimated to take between 5 to 10 years. And then we added or 20 years from date of issuance. If mining activities are ceased or interrupted for more than 1 year, the applicant shall notify the township and county as part of the annual report as to plans for future resumption of mining activities. So as part of the IUP, the applicants will need to provide the county and township an annual report showing how much material was removed, give us survey elevations of where material was extracted from. So as part of that report, so let's say they don't mine for a year and everything just sits idle, we want them to tell us in that report what their plans are for going forward, not just have a open mine pit where there's no activity. I'll just finish with the additional changes to the conditions. So condition number 4, the applicant's engineer, they're not proposing to mine into the water table. So the water table elevation varies between 711 and 715. As indicated here, they're not proposing to mine into that. Environmental health staff, has spoken to the applicant's engineer, and we're fairly confident that they're not going to do that. That's not part of the current proposed plans. But environmental health wanted us to add a line to that statement that says, however, if mining into the water table is proposed in the future, the applicant shall provide a groundwater monitoring plan to be included as part of this IUP. There really aren't any concerns with too much groundwater monitoring because everything flows to the west down to the river, and there's not anything really to the west of this site. There's land owned by SMSC, which they have industrial plans for, but there's really nothing in here that's overly concerning. So this is just a condition that we're adding, that if they do, say in a year or two, say we want to go into the groundwater, that they would need a monitoring plan. Number 6, we just eliminated a condition that's later on in the packet that talked about berming, because the berming is on the proposed operations plan. So we didn't want to have a condition that specifically talked about that. We want it to now reference back to, it's essentially sheet C2. And so they'll be doing berming and screening according to the approved plan. So we just added the line here that all berms shall be vegetated and mowed to prevent noxious weeds. We're removing condition number 7 that talks about haul roads. In other IUPs for mining, where we have situations where they're going by large residential areas, we have included a condition that talked about certain haul roads. But here we have a township road to a state highway to potentially a US highway. And in review with the applicant and their engineer, we didn't want this condition to be limiting, because if they go to the east, as an example, we didn't have it in here that they could use County Road 78, which is a major county road. So we didn't want to limit them in this circumstance where they're not really going by any residential properties. So we don't feel that there's an impact that we need to regulate haul roads here. And then I talked about condition number 14. Condition 17 is the one we removed about, or we took this language and put it in condition number 6 about the site being burned and vegetated and mowed on a regular basis. Condition number 30, we didn't really change. It just says the owners and operators shall work cooperatively with the Minnesota Department of Transportation to the east and south to extract material inside the required setback area and grade the embankment along the common property boundary. There was a review memo in your packet that was sent to us a couple weeks ago from MnDOT, and there was some miscommunication internally within MnDOT when that memo was written. So the applicant and their engineer, they met with MnDOT on Friday, and this email was included in your packet tonight from Michael Kowski, who's the engineering services unit and maintenance operations, and he basically outlines in this memo that they did meet with Kirsten Pauley from Sunday Engineering, and also Christina Morrison from Martin Marietta, and they've talked through all the issues that were outlined in the MnDOT memo, and those have essentially been addressed, and they will work cooperatively with the applicants and the landowners to move forward and address those concerns that MnDOT had in the memo. So this essentially is kind of telling us that they feel that everything's been resolved that they had outlined in there, so.
Commissioner,
Quick question on the MnDOT proposed paving issue was no longer concerned.
The Hall Road?
yeah.
No longer concerned?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, Commissioner Watson, it's no longer a concern, and what I was going to do now, I think, is step back, and Kirsten Pauley from Sunday Engineering, who's the project engineer, is here. She could tell you more about the MnDOT conversation. I would stand for any questions if you have them for me at this point, but I think if Kirsten wants to add anything, she certainly could at this point. And as I said, the township is here as well, but staff is recommending approval. The only outstanding review that has not taken place is Natural Resources. We received updated project plans, I think last Wednesday or Thursday. So Megan Tasca from Natural Resources just has to go through those plans, but we're not anticipating any issues because there wasn't really anything significant in her review.
Thank you, Mr. Wagner. Are there any questions from the commissioners for Mr. Wagner at this time?
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Huber?
as far as the mining is going to be, well, eventually they're going to be industrial or commercial up along 41, correct? That's kind of the plan.
Yep, Mr.
What I
Chair,
could
yeah.
see.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Huber.
Yeah.
Yep, it's zoned I2, so. it'd
And
be-
the mining is going to be sand and gravel, everything. Because a lot of times in these mining operations, they'll take out the gravel and put the sand back in. But in this case, you're taking everything out.
yeah, I think I'd maybe have Kirsten or Christina come answer. Or talk to you more about that.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, fellow commissioners. My name is Christina Morrison with Martin Marietta, and first of all, I want to thank you for this opportunity to be in front of you tonight to talk about our project. We've been operators in this area for decades as Tiller Corporation and our operating divisions, Spartan Sand and Gravel and Commercial Asphalt, and look forward to continuing to serve the community with construction aggregates. So to answer your immediate question, yes, we do plan to extract the sand and gravel materials. There's a lot of the materials really kind of already spoken for. A lot of it will go to our asphalt plant on the north side of TH 41. but also will serve the Demcon landfill for some of their landfill cells and capping. So yes, there's a market for the sand as well. But with me also tonight are, of course, Kirsten Polly with Sunday Engineering, who's our consulting engineer and geologist, and the property owner, Melkerson Sales, represented by Bruce Melkerson. Thank you.
Thank you. Did you want to make a statement at this time, Christina?
Thank you, Chairman and Planning Commission members. As Christina said, my name is Kirsten Polly. I'm a registered civil engineer and geologist with Sunday Engineering, and I've been working with the Melkerson family for many years on this site as it was part of the Merriam Junction Sands EIS. And I really don't have anything to add other than we are here to answer any questions that you may have. I think Greg gave a very thorough presentation of the proposal, and it's been a project that's been kind of in the works and being discussed for many, many years. So I think some of you have seen it as part of the Merriam Junction Sands work that was done in the past and are aware of the project in the area. So again, if you have any questions, we'd be happy to answer them, but I think I have nothing more really to add.
Mr. Chair, Kristen, as far as reclaiming in the area that potentially be industrial, do you have a compaction spec or something that you're proposing to put in there?
Yeah, so we have been talking with county staff about including a specification that will require compaction as well as the types of materials so that it's suitable for future development.
Good. And as far as, there's a part of the site that is going to be maybe that skinny part of the site where it's going to be dug down close to the water, but there might be some sand put back in place there.
Correct.
And that has to be a pretty clean sand, so the material you're taking out could be used for that, probably.
Yes, exactly, yep. And there'll be some screen sand and there'll be some stuff reserved so that it will infiltrate.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions at this time? Commissioner Pika?
Number 12, material tracked on a roadway shall be immediately swept. Is that part of your, or is that township, or is that?
That's the
county?
operator, that's a operator responsibility.
So you
So,
can go onto a township road and sweep it, that don't have to be a highway facility type machine, or?
well, Christina, maybe you can speak to that. Your machine comes and sweeps at the entrance and out onto the public roadway, correct? But I think you're probably better equipped to say exactly where they operate.
I'll just come up in here and speak so I can make sure you can hear me. But yes, we do have our own sweeper, and it's on a routine schedule. It's always scheduled for once a week when we're operating. And of course, we add additional time to that schedule if we're busier planning to do a haul. So yes, we're always sweeping our entrances and mitigating against any tracking onto roadways.
Commissioner Robbins?
I know Marty said this, and so I just maybe would like some confirmation of this. You're not anticipating any difficulties with the groundwater, the way it runs and everything. You don't think that this operation is endangering any of the groundwater kinds of things?
Correct. Part of this was studied in the Merriam Junction Sands environmental impact statement, so we have a very good understanding of the elevation of the groundwater, the direction of flow, down gradient water users, the type of potential contaminants, the best management practices that Martin Marietta employs to prevent spills, to manage their fuels in accordance with the Pollution Control Agency requirements, and obtaining the correct permits with the Pollution Control Agency. So also the very short time frame, this is a very small site, 19 acres is considered a relatively, well, no, not relatively, a very small site in terms of sand and gravel mining operations in this day and age. So correct, we do not have concerns about groundwater contamination at this site.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And your estimation is that 10 to 15 years I saw on that?
5 to 10.
5 to 10?
5 to 10,
Okay.
correct.
That's, when you were talking about the size of it, that's why I was
Yeah,
wondering
yeah.
about that. Okay, thank you. Any other questions this time?
I just have a procedural question for Greg before we open the public hearing. Given this recent agreement with MnDOT to mine close to the property boundary, does that change the site plan sheets that have been submitted, the reclamation plans, the drainage plans, given that information?
I can speak to that, Brad. So it does not, to answer your question. And the plans themselves also provided for, in the event that we couldn't reach an agreement with MnDOT, we would maintain setback and have slopes, et cetera, that were in accordance with the county ordinance. In talking with MnDOT, our agreement is, as we get close to reclamation, the idea is to have a mutually beneficial kind of grading between the two. MnDOT, when they were removing material for their site, has moved material up to the mining, common mining border. And so similar to how some of the other perimeters of their site have been reclaimed when there's been activity adjacent to them, it's going to be some field decisions and then review by their water resources to make sure that the stormwater is acceptable to both sides. And, but it does not require any changes to the plans.
Mr. Chair, as far as MnDOT grading, are you going to be grading into their property or okay, you're going to slope it back into their property?
Correct. So if you can imagine, MnDOT reclaimed up to the property line with the slope down. And so if Martin Marietta were to mine within 30 feet and start sloping, there would be basically an embankment.
Yeah.
And so there still will be an embankment, but it will be lowered a little bit so that there's going to be less slope and more buildable land.
You'll soften it a little.
Exactly.
And they're in agreement with that?
Correct.
That's so that doesn't become an issue.
Yeah.
That they're in agreement with that solution between the property lines.
Correct.
Good. Okay, thank you. Any further questions?
I have a question.
Commissioner Hughes?
Chair, this item, the 7, that you are saying that you'll use water to minimize the hauling, the dust created from the hauling. So do you have anything, I mean, how do you do that?
There's a water truck, and the water truck, I'm assuming, Christine, will be filled at the asphalt plant site where there's a production well located just across the street. So they'll fill up the water truck and water the paved, the gravel portion of the haul road as needed.
So water trucks will be washed or watered at the facility itself? Or do you have separate facilities somewhere where you wash the trucks?
To wash the exterior of the trucks?
Yeah.
For truck washing? Christina, maybe you can answer that. It wouldn't be at this site because you don't have a water source to wash the truck.
Yeah, thank you for your question. That's a good question. And occasionally, most of our equipment is portable in nature. So when they'll come onto the site, if there's a need to wash the equipment before removing it off-site to minimize tracking or to have any type of that material tracking out onto the roadways, they can bring our water truck on, use that as a source of water. Otherwise, we have a relationship with DEMCON as well as a source of water, but we would use that same tank that's on the truck. And so we have different size water trucks, but our most common portable one has the capacity for 4,000 gallons within that tank. So that's a portable source for the water, if that's helps answer your question.
And also, I don't know if this might help, but washing of the equipment on the site is regulated by the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency under the MPDS General Permit for Non-Metallic Mineral Mining and Associated Activities, which this site operates under. And it addresses requirements for washing equipment on site, not using any detergents, not using any degreasers, and all the water has to be infiltrated.
So you will be basically complying with those MPC regulations?
Correct. So in addition to the interim use permit that's issued on a county level, there's also several other operating permits that are required from the state, from Minnesota Pollution Control Agency and Department of Natural Resources, things like that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioners have any other questions at this time? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
This is a public hearing. This public hearing is open, and you can come up and make comment at this time. If you have comment on this application, just come up to the podium. There's a place to sign in. Please sign or start your comments with your name. Okay. Don't see anybody rushing to get up to the podium here. Okay. At this time, I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
Mr. Chairman, I move we close the public hearing.
I'll second.
Motion by Commissioner Watson, second by Commissioner Henches. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, vote aye.
Aye.
Aye. Public hearing is closed. At this time, I'll entertain a motion for action or discussion on this item.
Mr. Chair, based on criteria for approval listed in the staff report, I recommend approval of the interim use permit for Martin Marietta Materials, Inc. to operate a sand and gravel mine, noting that this recommendation is subject to conditions to be satisfied prior to the county board consideration of the IUP.
Second.
I have a motion by Commissioner Huber, second by Commissioner Robbins. I would also note that there's a recommendation from the Louisville Township with this,
Fine.
to approve this item. Is there any further discussion on this item before I call for a vote? At this time, all in favor of the motion, vote aye.
Aye.
Aye. Or opposed? Motion passes. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yep.
Our next item this evening is number 2022-081, a request for an interim use permit amendment of Valley Paving Mining to add 59.5 acres to the current 26.5 acre mine and increasing the maximum depth of excavation to permit mining up to 25 feet below the water table. Valley Paving Incorporated applicant and Ted G. and Mary R. Cordner and Cordner Living Trust property owners in sections 4 and 5 of Belle Plaine Township and section 32 and 33 of St. Lawrence Township. And I open this public hearing at this time. Good evening, Mr. Schmidt.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. What I plan on doing tonight is I'm going to introduce the project, give you a little site location map, talk about process. Then I'm going to turn the presentation over to Kirsten Polly with Sunday Engineering. She will go into a much greater level of depth on the project itself. Once she concludes with her presentation, I'll follow up with any additional comments that I have before we open it up to questions, if that's okay. All right, so on the screen, you can see a site location map for the property proposed for the amended interim use permit for mining. The property is zoned both Urban Expansion Reserve and Urban Business Reserve. Both zoning districts allow gravel mining as an interim use. Property is located to the south and west of US Highway 169, which is located here. And it's also about 3/4 of a mile from the city of Belle Plaine, which wraps around on the west and south of the property here. This gray line that separates the property in total is about 166 acres. This line separates Belle Plaine Township on the south from St. Lawrence Township on the north. So the project spans 2 townships. The portion of the project that sits within Belle Plaine Township is rather unique. This area of Belle Plaine Township is subject to an orderly annexation agreement between the Township of Belle Plaine and the City of Belle Plaine. Within that orderly annexation agreement, there is a requirement that any land use permit, including interim use permits, is approved by what's called an orderly annexation board. So within this area, land use permits are acted on by this orderly annexation board. It's made up of 2 members from Belle Plaine Township, 2 members from Belle Plaine City, 1 member from Scott County County Board. The portion of the property in St. Lawrence Township, however, is not subject to that agreement and has to follow our normal approval process, which includes a public hearing before this board with a recommendation onto the county board for final action. So it is staff's goal to have the county board approval and the orderly annexation board approval have consistent conditions, so we have consistent conditions across this project site. Here's an aerial photo of the property. And as you can see from the aerial photo, even though we're near the city of Belle Plaine, surrounding land uses are predominantly agricultural in nature. There aren't a lot of homes in the vicinity of the mine. The closest home outside of the operator's home here is located here about 250 feet to the west of the proposed mine expansion. I'm going to go jump down one more. This shows the existing gravel mine here that was approved, because it's in Belle Plaine Township, was approved by the Belle Plaine Orderly Annexation Board in 2018. They are reaching their limits on that particular mine, so now they're looking at expanding by approximately 60 acres here to the east and north. With that, what I will do is turn it over to Kirsten Polly and let her go through the expansion, answer any questions you have there.
Okay, and I can just click and, tap down, okay. All right, well, good evening. I suppose for the record, I should reintroduce myself. My name is Kirsten Polly with Sunday Engineering. I am a registered geologist and a registered civil engineer with Sunday Engineering, and I have been working with Valley Paving on this project since their original permitting with the Orderly Annexation Board. And so I will present to you tonight the project in detail, and of course, the applicant, Valley Paving, is with us here tonight too to help answer any questions. So Brett Karen and John Wolkash. So with that, we'll start just with the basic overview. The site is, the existing site is about 26.5 acres, located within Belle Plaine Township. And the proposed expansion is about 60 acres, with about 50 of those acres being located within St. Lawrence Township and about 10 acres located within Belle Plaine Township, just to the east of where the existing mine is. The total parcel is 166 acres, and as Marty indicated, it's owned by Ted and Mary Cordner. The site, because the expansion is greater than 40 acres, the site was subject to an environmental assessment worksheet process. The original mine was under the 40-acre threshold for environmental review, so when the expansion came about, it was a mandatory requirement that environmental review be conducted. And so we worked with Scott County, who was the RGU, or the regulatory government unit, over the past year in preparing a environmental assessment worksheet and going through that whole process, which includes public notification and review for 30 days to different government agencies. And the EAW itself basically looks at all types of environmental issues that the project could impact or affect. It looks at cover types, the various permits and approvals that are required, land use compatibility with adopted plans, geology, soils and topography, water resources, and surface and groundwater, potential contamination, hazardous materials and waste, fish and wildlife, plant communities, rare features, historic and cultural resources, visual impacts, air and noise, transportation, and cumulative effects. So it's a very comprehensive review on a wide variety of potential environmental issues. And that was completed by the county board adopting a findings of fact and negative declaration on the need for an EIS in October of 2022. So no permits can be issued until environmental review is complete. And so upon that negative declaration, then the IUP application was prepared and submitted to the county. And that is where we stand today. So a little bit about the existing conditions. Marty indicated that it's zoned urban expansion reserve and urban business reserve. And both of those zoning districts do allow mining as an interim use. The southern half of the site is within that orderly annexation area for the city of Belle Plaine. Existing land use of the site and surrounding areas predominantly agriculture in nature. You can see from the aerial photo that it's mostly ag land. There are a few homes within a quarter mile of the mine limits, 2 homes within the quarter mile, and then there is 1 home on the property itself. In this area, it's a terrace deposit. It's a sand and gravel deposit that was placed by some flowing water, and it's kind of an elevated terrace that's very well defined from a kind of a topographical point of view. And there's three total mines that are operating in the area. So immediately to the west of this property is the Miranda Mine, which is operated by Pentagon Materials, and that's located just to the west. And then up to the northeast is the Schultz Mine, also operated by Pentagon Materials. And then just immediately to the east of the expansion area is a mine that was mined many years ago when one of the local roadways was being constructed. So this is an area that has a known deposit of high-quality sand and gravel materials. The US 169 corridor runs just to the northwest of the site, and then Belle Plaine city limits is half mile to 3/4 of a mile to the southwest. The current operation, so the proposed application for this amendment deals with two main things. One is expanding and extending the mine limits, as well as to allow mining to a deeper elevation to mine into the water table. So all of the existing operation activities that have been taking place, there's no change requested to those. Basically, the process is removing topsoil and overburden, excavating the sand and gravel, processing it with crushing and screening and washing to produce various products, and then stockpiling and loading, and then reclamation. There's also operated at this site an asphalt mix production plant. And that asphalt plant is subject to an annual IUP, and an annual IUP as well. And that's part of tonight's.
Not with this board, because the asphalt plant will be in Belle Plaine. So on the Belle Plaine side next year.
Okay. So there is also an asphalt plant that's operated, but it's an annual permit, and you don't have to consider that because that's in the Belle Plaine area. So then the other activity that happens on this site is recycling of concrete and asphalt. And that is also subject to an annual permit from Scott County Solid Waste. So the proposed changes to existing operations include expanding the mine limits both to the west within Belle Plaine Township, approximately 10 acres, and then extending the mining operation to the north to Old Highway 169. And then to also allow mining into the water table. The mining operator proposes to use a backhoe, so the practical limitation on that is about 15 to 20 feet. So the request is to allow mining into the water table to 25 feet, a maximum of 25 feet, in pockets where good materials found. Some of the exploratory borings that have been conducted in this area indicate that there's areas of this deposit that the material that contains a lot of rock, which is the higher value material, is located beneath the water table and is worth going after. So, and then as a result of those two things, establishing a new reclamation plan that's suitable to achieve final development within the city of Belle Plaine Township and to return agricultural land uses in the portion that's in St. Lawrence Township. Also within the St. Lawrence Township portion is a proposed future corridor for a county road. And so the reclamation plan and the mining plan has been prepared to accommodate that future road alignment. And we've worked with Scott County and the Scott County Highway Department in defining that alignment that they have chosen as the preferred alignment through previous studies in this area. And then the county is also currently looking at some preliminary design of the actual roadway, and we'll be working with the applicant, obviously, with making sure that the reclamation and the grades are consistent with the design that they come up with. Because the area within the orderly annexation area is envisioned to be developed sooner than the portion to the north. The area within the orderly annexation agreement during the original permitting had some reclamation requirements to ensure that the grades were established so that they could extend sewer to the site and serve the site with their plans for future development. So all of those reclamation grades were established as part of the original mining plan. And then from those grades, the rest of the reclamation plan was designed off of those grades. Also, because there's an adjacent mining operation to the west, there will need to be coordination between the two mining operators to ensure that those that common mining border edge matches and that there's the grades are worked out so that that area as well is able to be developed in the future. And the end use reclamation plan contemplates leaving an approximately 10-acre water body created in St. Lawrence Township. And the portions of the site that will be reclaimed that have been mined below the water table and then backfilled are going to be subject to engineered backfill. That is basically what they'll do in this instance is screen the rock out, and then the screened sand is used as hydraulic backfill. Then there will be, in order to achieve proper compaction, there will be stockpiles of material to create surcharging and settlement monitoring in areas that would be slated for future development, like the roadway, to ensure that the mining and reclamation activity leaves the site in an area that's in a manner that's suitable for final development. The proposed conditions also require, and the current permit also requires, that any material that's brought to the site to be used as reclamation fill is manifested, that if it's coming from a site that's a road right-of-way project or not a greenfield site, it will be subject to certain testing requirements, and that information will be included in the annual reports. For the most part, the reclamation backfill won't be coming from imported materials. It's mostly going to be from sands that are not used in some of the production mixes on the site. And the other big change, of course, is the mining into the groundwater. And there's many examples of mine sites that mine into the groundwater table. And this was something that was evaluated in the environmental assessment worksheet as well. So the potential impacts to groundwater as a result of proposed mining operation were evaluated in the EAW. The general direction of groundwater flow was established from soil borings as well as area well logs and the Scott County Geologic Atlas, and nearby residential water supply wells were identified. The potential issue would be if there was a spill or release of fuel or some type of petroleum product that's used on site and in the mining equipment. And that's the primary concern, is that that spill would infiltrate through the granular soils that are associated with the sand and gravel operation, enter the groundwater, and then flow off site and potentially cause a problem in a down gradient water supply well. So mitigation was developed in the EAW to address the potential for groundwater contamination and impacts to downgradient water users by establishing a monitoring well network. And that includes also the identification of any downgradient water users that might be vulnerable or susceptible to groundwater contamination if it were to occur. And there is the closest residential the closest residence to the site is located just to the northwest of the active mining limits. And that well does not have an actual well log, but in conversations with the well owner, it is believed that that well is very shallow and draws water from the sand and gravel aquifer. So it is, it's been identified as a well that would be vulnerable if there were a spill. So the groundwater monitoring plan was developed around that. And it was developed to establish include 3 groundwater monitoring wells and then to identify mitigation. So in the event that something was found in the water, then there would be mitigation, which would include either water treatment system or drilling a new well to deeper groundwater aquifer, whatever the actual issue was found, it would need to be rectified. So the plan includes 3 down gradient monitoring wells and one residential water supply well. So in conversations with the well owner, the applicant has requested that they be able to include the residential drinking water well as part of the quarterly monitoring, so that the actual source is being monitored, and that's probably the most protective way to do it, is to include the actual source as well as the upgradient wells, monitoring wells. And one of the conditions is also to include an inspection of that well, since there is not a construction log, pending permission by the well owner to have a well driller come out and look at that well and verify what the construction details are. The groundwater monitoring plan that's proposed, and we're still working with environmental services on fine tuning and getting final approval, but we have met with them and we're proposing quarterly baseline sampling to establish what the current water quality conditions are at the site, as well as quarterly sampling for water level, as well as diesel range organics and BETX, which is benzene, ethylbenzene, toluene, and xylenes. And those are 4 compounds of health concern that are generally indicative of a petroleum spill or release. So those are the parameters that would be monitored for, and they're primary health drivers of concern, and the Minnesota Department of Health has established guidance values for all 4 of those constituents. So they're good compounds for a number of reasons to include in the monitoring plan. The federal government has also established drinking water standards, and so those standards are part of the plan, and the federal water quality standard has been established that so all public water supplies have to meet those levels, and for most people, water that meets these standards is considered safe to drink. And then the state has established some stricter guidance, including health risk limits and health-based values. The health risk limits are established and they're promulgated through legislative rule, and they're based on quite a bit of scientific study. They're peer-reviewed, and they're developed to include sensitive populations as well. Children, pregnant women, individuals compromised by pre-existing diseases, and elderly persons. And then the HBVs, or the health-based values, those are not established by rule, but they're based on data that hasn't necessarily been vetted as thoroughly, and it's a shorter process, so it's easier to establish these. The rulemaking process can sometimes be lengthy. So in looking at the monitoring plan and developing action limits, the most conservative values, those health-based values, are used to establish action limits and determine when additional monitoring and when actual mitigation would be appropriate if the drinking water standards are violated. Not just the drinking water standards, but below drinking water standards are verified in that residential water supply well. And that sampling and replacement of the well or water treatment system would be done at the cost of the applicant if the mining operation is causing that impairment. With that, in addition to, we kind of touched on this on the last one, but in addition to the IUP that the county issues, the Orderly Annexation Board also has a permit. So those are basically focused on land use. And then the county also issues a solid waste permit for recycling on an annual basis, and the asphalt plant is issued under a separate annual permit as well. The Minnesota Pollution Control Agency regulates this site through stormwater and the MPDS permit, and they also have groundwater regulations, and the Department of Natural Resources regulates the water appropriation. So there is aggregate washing at this site, which has been conducted. There is a water appropriations permit for this site, and that's regulated through the DNR. And then the Department of Health regulates the monitoring wells and drinking water standards. And then the federal government has the Mine Safety and Health Association, which requires what's the word I'm looking for, Marty?
I don't know.
Registration, they don't issue an actual permit, but they require registration, and then they have a slew of requirements and regulations that are needed to be followed. So, just so people know that, the county isn't the only one that oversees mining regulations. They're heavily regulated, and very specific permits that are focused on different areas of the environment are also required. So,
Commissioner Robbins.
If I could just follow up with a couple statements before we go into questions?
Yeah, no, go ahead, go ahead.
Okay. I just wanted to say that in your packet, you received recommendations from both Belle Plaine and St. Lawrence Township recommending approval. Representatives of both of those townships are here tonight if you have any questions for them. The applicant's engineer, I know Kirsten went into a great deal of detail on the groundwater monitoring. There was a memo from our environmental health office with some items that needed to be addressed. We received the revisions to the groundwater monitoring plan today. At first glance, they look to be adequate to address the concerns our environmental health office had, so we're comfortable moving forward with that. In addition, we are coordinating with the City of Belle Plaine and their staff on the review of this project. You did receive some amended conditions here today. We added one additional condition related to inspection of the site. That was at the request of the City of Belle Plaine. We will be holding our hearing with the Belle Plaine Orderly Annexation Board on February 1st. So those actions are in the works as well.
All right.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Robbins.
I've got a couple of questions for you. When you started this presentation, you said that there was some of the material that you wanted that was near or underneath the water table. If you didn't go and get that material, if you just, how much mining would you have left? In other words, if you stayed away from the water table, how much mining would you still be able to do?
can I grab my calculator?
Yeah, well,
If you want to know the answer, I will. Okay, so if you were to say an average of 15 feet below the water table, but not everywhere that you're going to be mining, would you probably do that? So if we said 80% of that, it's about a maybe over between 1 million and 1.5 million ton cubic yards of material that is available there to be.
if you do the water table.
If you do, yeah. So then your question actually was, how much mining would be left if?
If you didn't.
Yeah, so there's, I'm gonna say 30 feet average down to the water table. Is that fair? So then you're looking at maybe 3.5 million to 4 million cubic yards of material. So, think of it, there's about 30 of resource above and about 15 below. So it's about a third of the resource that's available is below the water table in that 15 feet of what's being asked for.
Mr. Chair, one more question if I could.
Commissioner Robbins.
You said that you do a lot of this testing. If you find something, water that's polluted, and I think I got this, but I just want to make sure. Does your company or the applicant clean it up? In other words, if these tests show pollution or oil in the water, then are you the ones that clean that up and then the county checks you on that. Is it something like that?
It's something like that. So the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency has to be notified, okay? And so they will, the applicant would work with the county and notify the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency, and based on the results, they would have to do a site investigation, and they have protocols then for voluntary cleanup. And so that would be done by, not by my company necessarily, but a third-party engineering firm, and it would go through the state's regulations. The mitigation plan wouldn't have to go through those state requirements, so that could be addressed immediately and efficiently rather than what might take longer to do an actual cleanup.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Any other commissioners have any other questions at this point?
Mr. Chair, I had a couple of questions for Ms. Polly there, but as far as the attachment 5 for reclaiming, you have a spec in for compaction, which is good. I was wondering, it seemed like it was a little bit, like 1 test per acre seemed like it was pretty far and few between. I was wondering what you thought about that.
Well, it might be, but because there is, the issue is because there is no actual development plan, it becomes a little, we're trying to develop a spec that ends up with a piece of property that can be built on in the future. And it's not considered that building pads will be compacted to the, required compaction for that building pad, that there will be some additional work. But that's what was proposed, was the 1 per acre.
Okay, seems a little far apart, but that's fine. Also, you talk about in the upper 3 feet, not using silty clay, and sandy lean clay. I was just curious why you're specking, you want to spec more of a sand in the upper 3 feet for roads and that, and pavements?
Where did you see, is it the upper 3 feet of the hydraulic fill above the water
Oh, no,
table?
I'm talking about on section A, backfill material, 4th paragraph. 2, 3, 4, yeah.
Yep.
I was just curious why you're restricting the soils in the upper 3 feet.
Where am I getting close?
Commissioner Huber, which paragraph?
The 4th paragraph under A, backfill material, reclaiming backfill in section A, 4th paragraph.
Okay.
I don't think I have a good answer for you.
I mean, if you have good sand, it's even better because people for roads and
Yeah,
for
yeah.
floor slab stuff, it'd be better. I don't know why we're restricting that. And one other question I have, is a sewer, sanitary sewer in place in this area already?
No, but there's some plans that the city has provided with elevations and potential extension.
Will that be put in before, I assume that would be put in before something's developed on the site? The sewer would be put in.
Or hand in hand with, yeah. I mean, there's not going to be development until there's sewer available.
The only concern I have is it depends how deep that sewer is. If you're dewatering for that sewer and you dose in material that's just sand and loose, that maybe could cause some problems to settlement. It'd be better to get the sewer in there before you develop it, just because that would help on the settlement issue, because you're dewatering. I don't know if the sewer's that deep, if it's 20 feet or 30 feet deep.
Yeah, it may be that it has to be dewatered. It's very near if it's not.
Yeah.
So that's something to take into consideration.
Yeah, you'd have to think about
Yeah.
that to be a worthy goal. Okay, that's all I have.
Anything else?
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Would like the township, like to make any comments on this at this time? I'm going to open this up to this is a public hearing, of course, and if you would like to make comment on it, come up this time and make comment. Just coming to the podium and start with your name. There's a sign-up sheet next to the podium. Yes, it is open.
Bob Pieper from Louisville Township. I'm in the wrong township for this thing, but I just have one question for Kirsten. From the mining site, the water flow, you said goes which direction and how far till it reaches the river from this site?
It's just under the water flows to the northwest towards the Minnesota River, which is located just under a mile from the site.
The reason I ask that is if there is a contamination or something, how far the water goes and how many downstream wells further on. And
It impacted.
that was my only question. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Yes, if you'd like to address that.
Yeah,
Mrs.
so, I talked about the most vulnerable well, but we also looked as part of the EAW at all the other wells that were potentially down gradient, because across 169, there are several other wells. And for the most part, they are finished in a deeper bedrock aquifer. So, and they're a greater distance. So the idea is, if you want to catch anything that might happen, but they are definitely not the ones that are at the high risk and not as vulnerable as the one that we've kind of targeted to monitor.
When you do the monitoring wells, just another question on that, how deep are the monitoring wells that go in there?
They're shallow, so they are getting, typically, petroleum products are lighter, not all the compounds are, but they tend to be lighter, and so you want to get the uppermost part of the water table is where you want to target your screening for the monitoring wells.
Okay, thank you. We're still open at this time. Anyone else like to ask any questions? Make any comment on this application? Okay. Seeing as no one's moving to the podium at this time, I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing. Motion by Commissioner Watson.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Pika. All in favor, vote aye.
Aye.
Aye. I will entertain a motion for action or discussion of this item.
Mr. Chairman, I have a comment. We've looked at several mining applications over our time here, and I would say that these past two that we've had public hearings tonight are probably the two of the most comprehensive applications that we've seen. So with that comment, I'll try to talk over to the speakerphone here.
First time I've done that. And the last.
First time she's ever sat next to me, too. You know? Based on the criteria for approval and conditions listed in the staff report, I recommend approval of the amended interim use permit for Valley Paving to add 59.5 acres to the current 26.5 acre mine and increasing the maximum depth of excavation to permit mining up to 25 feet below the water table, recognizing the townships have approved.
I have a motion by Commissioner Watson. Do I have a second?
I second it.
Second by Commissioner Huber. Is there any further discussion?
Yes, Mr.
Commissioner Robbins.
I have a couple of things. I want to echo what my fellow commissioner said. I want to congratulate you and commend you for all of the testing you've done and all of the processes that you've done. I will tell you, though, that I get nervous when we talk about water tables, particularly because there's the second largest river in Minnesota that's not far away from there. So you just have to receive my concern and my hope that when you do this, that if anything appears to be, that you get on it right away. All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any further comments? Okay. This time I'll call for a vote. All in favor, vote aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion is approved. Thank you very much for your presentation this evening. Our next item is a request. 2022-080 to approve a conditional use amendment, permit amendment to expand Camping World's existing RV sales and service center to include a total of approximately 13.32 acres and construct a new service center. Camping World applicant and FRHP4 LLC property owner in Section 9 of Sand Creek Township. I will now open the public hearing.
Mr. Chair, I want to recluse myself. My company has been involved with this project, so I'm going to step out of here
Okay.
temporarily.
Please make a note that Commissioner Huber is recusing himself from discussion and leaving the chambers at this time. Good evening, Mr. Wagner.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. Pinch hitting for Nathan Hall, who has been down with an illness today. So familiar with the project and presenting it to you here. So the site is located in Section 4 Sand Creek Township. Property abuts US Highway 169, which is on the east side of the parcel. But the site is accessed off of Greystone Avenue and Jordan Avenue, which you can see is connected to 169 by Bluff Drive. So these properties are in the Greystone Industrial Park, which was industrial park developed in the late 1990s. The red line outlines the parcels owned by Camping World, but I want to point out the two here in the middle are Zone C1 General Commercial, the one to the south and the one to the west. Both of those properties are zoned I1 industrial. The request before the commission tonight is the conditional use permit amendment for Camping World to expand their existing RV sales and service center by adding approximately 13.32 acres with those two lots. Here's the aerial photo of the industrial park area in the existing Camping World facility. There is a service center on the northeast parcel that's just over 9,000 square feet, which you can see here, and then you can see the campers parked there. And then to the south, there's another paved lot that Camping World has that is included in the conditional use permit. The original CUP for RV sales and service was issued on these parcels back in 2000. That was then bought by another company called Noble RV. Noble RV did expand to the south on the parcel that is shown there where you can see campers. Camping World purchased the property in October of 2020, so the conditional use permit was transferred to Camping World. What they're requesting through this larger project is to take all four of these parcels and essentially bring them under the conditional use permit umbrella. There's some actions that are in process that are not before this commission tonight, but will be coming to you in the future. So essentially, we have three applications. The first one is to amend the conditional use permit to bring the other two properties under the CUP. But number two is they will be platting the property together to make it all one parcel. Essentially, these are all four individual lots, but due to historical expansion of the facility, there's been some damage done to septic areas that were supposed to be preserved for those individual lots to work. And so when we met with the applicants late this fall, we explained, or Environmental Services explained to them that due to campers and paving and gravel and driving over certain areas, those septic sites would no longer be suitable. So we advised them that they should combine everything under one parcel, make those one lot. So that is in progress and likely will be before this commission in February. In addition, outdoor sales of recreational vehicles is not a permitted use in the industrial district. So as I said before, the two parcels here where the CUP currently exists, those are zoned commercial, but it's the parcel to the south and the parcel to the northwest, those are industrial. So they need to change those to commercial to allow those RV sales areas. So the third thing in process right now is a comprehensive plan amendment. The comprehensive plan amendment has been initiated. What happens with the comprehensive plan amendment is the applicants submit the application to the county, we review it, we send it out for adjacent agencies to do a 60-day review. So that would be township, city of Jordan, other agencies. Once we get those comments, we bring that amendment before the commission for a recommendation, and then that recommendation goes to the county board and ultimately to the Met Council. So it is likely that the comp plan amendment will also be on your February agenda. The reason we're bringing the CUP to you first is because of those reviews, especially with the comp plan amendment. Camping World would like to get started as soon as possible on the new RV service center, which would be on the northern lot here. That is a permitted, or that is an allowed use in the industrial district. So you can have a auto RV service center. So we're letting them kind of move forward with that because that use could go on that lot. So this is kind of the overall site plan that they're proposing here. So we have the existing facility with their parking on the two lots, which are essentially in white here on the site map. And then what they would like to do is eventually pave the south lot like they do with the two middle lots, and then have outdoor sales for their RVs. And then the service center, which is a 17,882 square foot facility, would go on that northwestern lot. Yep. So this facility here would have employees. So between the two buildings, Camping World has indicated they'll have approximately 40 employees between sales and service. So there is an existing septic system, for bathrooms in this facility. And then this lot here would have septic and stormwater management on this lot here. So they're proposing with the plans that are presented before you tonight, they're showing where the building will be located, parking, and then parking for vehicles under repair. But if I scroll through here, okay, so this is what the building would look like, basically service doors so people could drive their RVs in. And then it would have, looks like 6 bays, 6 or 7 bays here where RVs could be worked on. There would be office area for employees and also service personnel, and then some indoor storage for parts and service. So again, this facility would be permitted in the industrial district, so we're moving forward with the CUP amendment to allow them. As soon as ground conditions allow, and as soon as the conditional use permit is ready to go to the county board, this would be forwarded to the board for action. There are a couple conditions. We are recommending approval of the request. There were some review comments in the staff packet. Environmental Services asked some questions about how many employees, how many customers in that service center, just to get a better handle on how much water usage will go in there. So those items are being addressed. I spoke to Mary Von Eschen with our Environmental Services Department today, and I know she's been in contact with the Camping World people. So those things are being addressed, and similarly, Megan Tasca did a review. Camping World is working on updating their project plans to address the stormwater comments that Megan had here. So what we're anticipating is a resubmittal of the application site plans to address these comments. And we have our recommendation conditioned on satisfying these items prior to going to county board. Lastly, applicants did meet on January 5th with the Sand Creek Township Board, and the town board did recommend approval of the request. As indicated, staff is recommending approval. We do have a representative from Camping World here tonight if you would have questions for them. Otherwise, I would stand for any questions that the board would have.
Mr. Wagner, are there any questions for Mr. Wagner at this point? Commissioner Pika?
One small question. What's going to go in the existing building that's on the property now, is that going to be another maintenance building, or there's going to be two of them, or?
No, Mr. Chair, Commissioner Pika, the existing building is their main kind of sales center.
Sales.
So, yep, so that will remain as is, and for that current use, the new building would be more the service. They kind of have it in the current building, they kind of have sales and service, but the current building's only like 9,000 square feet. They're proposing something that's 17,000 square feet, so more service in the other building. So the current building would be just mainly sales.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Wagner at this point? Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Wagner. This is a public hearing. If anyone would like to make comment on this application, they can come up to the podium and make a comment at this time. At this time, seeing that no one is coming up to the podium to make comment, I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Motion by Commissioner Henches, second. Second by Commissioner Robbins. All in favor, vote aye. Aye. Public hearing is closed. I will entertain action or a motion or discussion on this at this time.
Well, Mr. Chairman, based on the criteria for approval listed in the staff report, I recommend approval of the conditional use permit amendment to expand Camping World's existing RV sales and service center, noting that this recommendation is subject to the conditions listed in the staff report that must be satisfactorily addressed prior to county board consideration of the CUP.
I have a motion by Commissioner Robbins, second by Commissioner Pika. I would also note that the township, Sand Creek Township, has recommended approval of this item as well. Is there any further discussion on the item before us? This time I'll call for vote. All in favor, vote aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes with 6 approving and 1 abstention. Okay, at this time.
We can come back.
Yes. I'll make notation on the record that Commissioner Huber has re-entered the chambers. Our next item is 2020-048 Schieffer Heliport Conditional Use Permit. Doug Schieffer is the applicant and property owner of Section 26 in Cedar Lake Township. And Marty Schmitz will be making the staff report on this.
Yes, I am, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Most of you will recall, back in November 2020, Mr. Schieffer received a conditional use permit to operate a private heliport from his property in Cedar Lake Township. This property is actually in the Wildwood Pond development, about a half-mile south of County Road 2 and a half-mile east of County Road 23. He has 40 acres there. This is his home is located in this area. The heliport is in a high spot on the property right here. You can see it on our newer aerial photos. In January of 2022, Mr. Schieffer was again before this board requesting an amendment to that conditional use permit to increase the number of takeoffs and landings and expand hours of operation for the helipad. That amendment did allow up to 75 takeoffs, 75 landings from the heliport. Also expanded the hours when he could use it. In the information you have received tonight, the flight log, which goes up through December 8th, showed 32 takeoffs and 32 landings, well under the 75 takeoffs and landing permitted. I'm guessing there was probably a few more in the month since we've received those flight log data, but still within the conditional use permit. Jump to, so this is that flight tracker data that we get from MAC. We can get this from MAC at any time. It does show Mr. Schieffer using the north flight path, the west flight path, and the south flight path. Based on the flight log data, he used the south flight path, which is the preferred flight path 45% of the time, and he used the north flight path, which is The one that's probably least preferable because it has the greatest impact on residents out there 13% of the time. Staff has not received any complaints from neighbors over the past year, which I'd say is a very big positive. Here, we are recommending that the conditional use permit continue as issued. And I will stand for any questions. The applicant is here tonight if you have any questions for him as well.
Okay. Are there any questions, Mr. Schmidt, on that? It looks very good. It's good to, like you said, that there hasn't been any complaints on it, and it seems to be working very well.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, it's quite refreshing. We did not mail out notices of this review. I did inform Lauren Balls, Liz Brandt, two of the neighbors that were probably had the most concerns on this operation, so they were aware of the meeting tonight. I got a thank you from Lauren, no additional comments, so I'm thinking things are going quite well.
Mr. Chair, could I just ask one thing real
Sure.
quick?
Commissioner Robbins?
There's 32 flights here listed, and the limit's 75. Is there, and I don't know if the applicant wants to, will they ever get to 75? Is that a projection that, were they high on that projection? I mean, it's not even half.
Yeah, and what was allowed in the previous conditional use permit was 50, and I think there was concern that he would exceed that 50 flights in and out. So that was the reason he requested to increase to 75. My understanding, he can come up here too, but my understanding is he felt he could stay under that 75 number, but that 50 number in the original permit, you know, he easily could go over that one.
Yeah, Commissioner Watson?
The applicant, is he requesting any additional changes to the conditional use permit?
No, not right now. I think he would like to see the annual review go away.
Point.
And we will talk with him about ways of maybe modifying that, so if we don't have complaints, he does not need to be here for this activity.
We've done this several times, and because we're not getting any complaints and they're operating a very safe heliport, that I'm wondering why it has to come before this commission on an annualized basis. Possibly we could make it semi-annual or every 5 years, I don't know what makes sense, but I think we're just taking up time. I mean, it's operating, it's being very efficient and very effective, and a lot of folks had a chance to vent their feelings about it, and since that occurred, we've had some really nice, peaceful operations, so.
Well, and perhaps we could move it to an administrative review unless there was extraordinary complaints or something that needed to come before the board, if the commission would be amenable to some type of
Very amenable to that.
modification such as that. Two of the commissioners live underneath, we live relatively close to the flight path, and it has not been an issue. So I think it's worked out very well. The applicant has gone through a lot to make this work too, and we appreciate that. And that's a big part of why this, I think, has worked out so well.
Blood, sweat, toil, and tears.
Exactly. So that'd be my comment on it. We do not need to take any action, it's just accept the report.
We do not. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. And thank you, Chief, for,
Thanks.
thank you. Thank you all very much. All right, our next item is our election of our officers for the Plan Advisory Commission for 2023. And we will open the nominations.
Mr. Chair, I nominate Tom Von Huff as chair for the Planning Commission.
Second.
Okay, I have a nomination for Tom Von Huff as chair by Commissioner Huber, second by Commissioner Robbins. Are there any other nominations? Are there any other nominations? Are there any other nominations? Okay. I would look for a motion to close the nominations.
So moved.
Motion by Commissioner Henches.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Huber. All in favor of closing the nominations, vote aye.
Aye.
Close the nominations for Chair of the Plan Advisory Commission. We will now vote on nominations for Chair of Planning Advisory Commission for 2023. The nominated person is Commissioner Tom Von Hoff. All in favor, vote aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Tom Von Hoff will be the new chair of the Planning Advisory Commission for 2023. And it was a 7-0 vote, I believe.
Congratulations.
Thank you. We'll now open nominations for the vice chair of the Planning Advisory Commission for 2023.
Mr. Chair, I nominate Lee Watson as vice chair.
Is there a second for that nomination?
I'll second.
Second. Motion by Commissioner Huber, second by Commissioner Henches. Are there any other nominations? Are there any other nominations? Are there any other nominations? Hearing none, I will move a motion to close the nominations.
So move.
Motion by Commissioner Huber, second.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Pika. All in favor, vote aye.
Aye.
Nominations are closed. We'll now vote on Lee Watson for Vice Chair of the Planning Advisory Commission for the year 2023. All in favor, vote aye.
Aye.
Lee Watson will be the Vice Chair of the Planning Advisory Commission for 2023, and the vote count was 7-0. Approval. We will now open nominations for Secretary of the Planning Advisory Commission for 2023.
Mr. Chair, I would nominate Ken Robbins as secretary.
Kent Robbins has been nominated Secretary for 2023 by Ray Huber. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Commissioner Henches. All in favor, vote aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion to close the nominations. We have a
So moved.
motion by Commissioner Watson, second
I'll second it.
by Commissioner Huber. All in favor, vote aye.
Aye.
Aye. The nominations are closed. Let's see. We will now vote for Secretary of the Plan Advisory Commission, Kent Robbins, Commissioner, for 2023. All in favor, vote aye.
Aye.
Aye. Commissioner Robbins will be the Secretary of the Plan Advisory Commission for 2023, and vote count was 7-0. Very good. The adjournment comes after this. Do we have anything from the manager's report?
Just a couple of items, Mr. Chair. Going back to board action on some of your recommendations, on December 20th, the county board did approve the rezone of 132 acres from A1 to A3. Robert and Teresa Koenig were the applicant and property owners in Belle Plaine Township. Then last week on January 3rd, the board did approve the conditional use permit amendment for Dakota Lawn to change the primary use of their building from general contracting to leasing of commercial office uses. That was in Louisville Township. And then they also approved the conditional use permit for Blue Sky Freight Carriers to operate a freight truck repair shop in an industrial park in Newmarket Township. One thing that Greg is putting on the board is we're starting to pull some year-in-review data. I wasn't able to pull all the data before tonight's meeting, so I'm going to bring some more information to our February meeting. But on the screen here is the new housing starts in our 10 townships. And you can see in 2022, we matched the same number of new housing starts as last year. So there was 63 new single-family home permits issued. And as you can see on the chart, a good bulk of those were in Cedar Lake Township, where 20 new homes were issued, and then followed by Spring Lake Township with 14. So we continue to see a lot of our both platting for new lots and then the subsequent new homes going on those lots in our eastern townships. So that trend continues. You can also see some of the average value information as well. So not a real change in the housing development activity in the townships. So that's one piece of information. By next month, I'm also going to compile all of the new lots that were created the past year in 2022 by township, so we can see how those trends look from past years. and also all of the commercial and industrial development that came before you in 2022. And we're starting to put that information together, and there was a remarkable number of projects really that you looked at and approved this year. And so we just want to recognize that. So I'll have that data for you in February.
Mr. Chair? Brad, do you see any, when you say the value, cost of the houses, is it going up, increasing more than you thought, or is it?
Yeah, the average value of the homes.
Confirms the.
Yeah, yeah, I think the numbers bear that out. You can see by township some of the values. I think across the, well, there's a few townships where maybe it has dropped, but it looks to me across the board that the values increased considerably from 2021, 2020, 2019. Again, those are just the average values. So those are the values that were reported on the building permit itself, the value of the home.
Thank you.
Brad, I have just an observation. It was contentious at the time, maybe still is, I don't know, but I live in Cedar Lake Township, and we kept that at 10 acres. And that's the place where you're getting all the new homes right now. And I thought then, and I think now, there's a real demand for people that want to move out to the country, but don't want to have a 2.5 acre lot. They want to have 10 acres. So, the jury's out, but I'm liking it.
Yeah, but I hear what you're saying, Commissioner. I don't know of those 20 homes that were built this year. I don't know how many of them were on platted cluster developments that just haven't
I'd
been
love to
built
know
on
that.
yet
That'd be-
versus
yeah.
on 10-acre lots. So maybe that's something we can look into to
That would be
test that
interesting.
area out.
Mr. Chair, I mean, the cluster are 2.5 acres, right? Yeah, I think there's a lot of demand, maybe I'm wrong on this, for a 2.5 acre parcel. People want some land, be able to build some outbuildings and stuff like that. 10 acres, you have to really work at it. You got land, you have
Yes.
to keep up in that. So I think there's a huge demand for 2.5 acres. Second, I'm gonna have to see how the assessed values went up so much in some places. I have to talk to assessor on that, but it seems like they went up dramatically from 21 to 22, but now the price of homes are going down again. So it'll just be interesting how that shakes out for next year.
Yeah. So more data to come, and I think that is all I have for an update. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Good. Do we have any, just to look out a little bit over this beginning of the new year, do we have any work plans that we're going to be looking at as we get into the spring? And I know that usually we do a couple of workshops throughout the year, and if you had thought about anything with that,
Yeah, no, Chair, we did have, it seems like we did have a lot of workshops in the last couple of years.
Right.
That primarily was focused on some of our zoning ordinance updates and some of our kind of trickier land uses that were getting a lot of attention. We haven't developed any new topics that we felt we need to workshop with you yet. So I don't see anything on the immediate horizon.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, Brad, as far as, 10 acre parcels at 2.5, we've talked about some like Newmarket and Spring Lake going to 2.5. Have we expanded that, or has that been kind of holding its own for now?
In terms of new areas.
From 2.5, from 10 to 2.5 acre.
That's a question that's looked at every 10 years when we do our comp plan amendment. And so really, we're not going to even look at that question for several years. And then we'll start meeting again with townships and residents and open houses and see what the sentiment is out.
So right now, we're staying pat where we're at.
Correct.
Brad, did we hear any more about terms for the commissioners?
Yeah. I thought maybe you'd already been notified, but
No.
I may have it here.
But, excuse me, what did you ask?
I asked about
term, I'm
terms
sorry.
for the commissioners.
Thank you.
Length of terms, because there's 3, 2, and 1 year terms, is that correct?
2 and 1, or 3 and 2.
3 and 2 year terms.
Commissioner Henches was appointed for a 3-year term. Commissioner Huber was appointed for a 2-year term. Commissioner Watson was appointed for a 2-year term. Commissioner Hussein was appointed for a 3-year term. Commissioner Robbins was a 3-year term. Commissioner Von Hoff was a 3-year term, and Commissioner Pica was a 2-year term. And those are your first of 3 terms. And the next time you're appointed would be for 3 years.
I'll be
They
dead.
only staggered this first round so that there'd be some staggering,
Yeah.
should you all want to be on this commission for what would be nine more years.
Okay.
Okay. And it's hard to remember, but I think originally it was it used to be 3-year terms.
To my knowledge, it was 3-year terms.
It was.
It was, wasn't it?
Then
was
it went
3-year
to a yearly term,
Right.
and now the board wants to go back to the 3-year term.
terms. Okay. Very good.
But with term limits was the new, a 3-year term is the term limit.
Right.
So a person can sit on it for 9 years.
Okay, good. Anything else for the cause?
Nine years is the max no matter what, and then they would need to step down to allow someone else to be appointed. And then presumably 3 years after that, they could be appointed back to it, is my understanding. Yep. Oh, no.
No. But, and I think there's 7 commissioners. 5 go by the districts that the county commissioners have, and then 2 are at large, that the whole county commission votes on those 2. So that's my understanding of it.
That is correct.
Is that accurate?
That is correct.
So that's how there's 7 of us here. So that's how it works. And we have to have an odd number, and 7 works out very well, to, consider things. And then we get a good coverage of the county. It seems to work out very well. The plan. Okay. Very good. Is there anything else? Again, welcome, Anwar Hussain, our newest commissioner. Glad to have you on board. And we're off to a new year, so I'll look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
A motion by Commissioner Henches.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Robbins. All in favor, vote aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Not gonna survive the term.
Okay, nobody dies.
Boy, that is an awful.
Nobody.
Do you live every day?
I can't remember it.
God,